In the shadowed annals of human ingenuity, where the veil between myth and machinery thins to a whisper, there lies a tale of forgotten fire, a blaze not born of coal or steam, but of the atom's furious heart. It begins in the fog-shrouded streets of Victorian London, where the air hung heavy with the soot of progress, and inventors toiled in garrets lit by gas lamps that flickered like dying stars. Yet beneath this facade of industrial triumph lurked echoes of an older world, a civilization whose remnants whispered secrets of power unbound by the laws of the day. Picture the year 1847, when a young archaeologist named Elias Thorne unearthed a peculiar artifact during an expedition to the windswept ruins of an ancient Mesopotamian ziggurat. Buried deep beneath layers of sand and forgotten kings, it was a cylindrical device of burnished metal, etched with symbols that defied translation, swirls, and angles that seemed to pulse with an inner light when held against the sun. Thorne, a man of scholarly bent with a penchant for the esoteric, smuggled it back to England, concealing it within the folds of his expedition crates amid pottery shards and clay tablets. He knew not what he carried, only that it hummed faintly in his dreams, promising revelations that could eclipse the steam engines roaring across the empire. Upon his return, Thorne sequestered himself in a modest workshop on the outskirts of Manchester, where the clamor of factories provided a symphony for his experiments. The device, which he dubbed the ether core, was no mere relic. It was a furnace, a contained inferno that drew energy not from fuel, but from the splitting of invisible particles. As he probed its mechanisms with crude tools, a brass hammer, a magnifying lens borrowed from a local optician, he discovered chambers lined with a crystalline substance that glowed when agitated. Igniting it required no match or flint. A simple alignment of internal rods, guided by the etched symbols, unleashed a heat so intense it melted iron in seconds, yet contained within an aura of cool blue light that spared the surrounding air. Word of Thorne's experiments spread in hushed tones among the scientific elite. In the salons of the Royal Society, whispers circulated of a power source that could propel ships across oceans without coal, illuminate cities without gas, and forge metals with the precision of gods. But this was no benevolent gift. The ether core bore the marks of a lost people, a civilization that had risen in the cradle of rivers long before recorded history, harnessing the nucleus as we now chase electrons. Their furnaces, scattered across buried sites from the Nile to the Indus, were not for mere warmth or industry, but for dominion, engines of war that could level mountains or boil seas. Thorne's first demonstration occurred in a derelict warehouse by the Thames, attended by a select few, industrialists with fortunes tied to coal mines, engineers skeptical of the occult, and a shadowy figure from the Crown's intelligence apparatus, cloaked in anonymity. As the device activated, a low rumble filled the space, vibrating through bones and bricks alike. The core spun, its symbols igniting in sequence, and from its vent emerged a stream of energy that heated a cauldron of water to steam in moments, driving a makeshift piston with force enough to shatter chains. The witnesses gasped. One fainted, overcome by the unnatural radiance. "This is the fire of Prometheus unbound," Thorne proclaimed, his eyes alight with fervor. "A legacy from ancients who tamed the stars. Yet forbidden knowledge carries its curse." The ether core's power was unstable, prone to surges that warped metal and induced visions in those nearby. Hallucinations of towering cities crumbling under atomic skies, of priests in robes invoking rituals to contain the fury. Thorne documented these in a leather-bound journal, pages filled with sketches of the device's innards, concentric rings of an unknown alloy, perhaps uranium-infused, that facilitated fission without the cataclysm we associate with it today. He theorized the ancients had master moderation, using rare earths to dampen the reaction, creating furnaces that burned eternally on a whisper of fuel. As Thorne refined his replica, crafting smaller versions from scavenged parts, the establishment took notice. Coal barons, fearing obsolescence, spread rumors of sorcery and danger. In 1852, a sabotage attempt razed his workshop, the explosion attributed to faulty gas lines, though Thorne knew better. Fleeing to the Scottish Highlands, he allied with a reclusive inventor named Fiona MacLeod, a woman of keen intellect shunned by male-dominated academies. Together, they delved deeper, unearthing texts from forbidden libraries that spoke of the star forges, nuclear hearts used by a pre-Sumerian empire to power levitating obelisks, and eternal flames in temples. Their collaboration bore fruit in a hidden glen, where they constructed a full-scale furnace. Encased in lead-lined stone to shield its emissions, it generated heat that powered a rudimentary generator, lighting bulbs strung like fairy lights across the misty moors. But the device demanded tribute. Prolonged exposure caused ailments, skin that blistered without burn, eyes that saw phantoms in the dark. MacLeod, ever the pragmatist, recorded these effects meticulously, noting how the ancients had mitigated them with elixirs of herbs and minerals, formulas lost to time, but hinted at in cuneiform shards. Rumors of their work reached continental Europe, drawing the interest of Prussian engineers and French alchemists. In Paris, a clandestine society known as the Luminari replicated Thorne's designs, using them to fuel secret forges that produced armaments of unprecedented strength. Whispers told of cannons that fired projectiles with atomic precision, melting through fortifications like butter. Yet catastrophe loomed. A test in the Bavarian forest in 1861 unleashed an uncontrolled reaction, vaporizing a village and leaving a crater scarred with glassy residue. The incident was buried under layers of official denial, attributed to a meteor strike, but survivors spoke of a sun born on Earth, blinding and merciless. Back in Britain, Thorne and MacLeod pressed on, their furnace evolving into a network of linked cores, a grid that could theoretically power an entire city. They envisioned a world remade, factories humming without smoke, trains gliding on rails of pure energy, skies clear the industrial pall. But the forbidden nature of their pursuit attracted predators, agents of a shadowy cabal, descendants, perhaps, of those ancient guardians who had sealed away the technology, infiltrated their circle. These watchers believed the nuclear furnaces were relics of a fallen age, when hubris had triggered cataclysms that sank continents and birthed legends of floods and fire. In a moonlit confrontation amid the ruins of a Highland castle, Thorne faced one such interloper, a cloaked figure bearing a medallion etched with the same symbols as the core. This power destroyed them, the stranger intoned, voice echoing like wind through tombs. It will consume you as well. A struggle ensued, the furnace's glow illuminating blades and desperation. MacLeod intervened, wielding a prototype emitter that channeled the core's energy into a beam of searing light, felling the assailant, but scorching the glen in the process. Fleeing once more, they sought refuge in the American frontier, where the vast landscapes promised anonymity. Arriving in New York in 1865, amid the chaos of a nation rebuilding after Civil War, they established a laboratory in the bowels of a Brooklyn warehouse. Here, the furnace reached its zenith, a self-sustaining reactor fueled by trace elements extracted from common ores, producing energy that could illuminate Broadway or propel ironclads across the Atlantic. Thorne's journal swelled with entries, detailing the ancients' downfall, a war of gods where nuclear forges were weaponized, unleashing storms of radiation that sterilized lands and mutated beasts into myths. Yet prosperity bred envy. Edison's precursors, tinkering with electricity, viewed the nuclear path as heresy, a shortcut that bypassed their filaments and dynamos. Sabotage struck again, a leak in the containment, releasing invisible poisons that sickened workers and withered crops nearby. The press fed tales of demonic engines, decried the experiments as abominations. Thorne, weakened by exposure, penned a final manifesto, urging caution. We tread the path of titans, but their footprints lead to graves. MacLeod, surviving him, vanished into obscurity, her notes scattered to trusted allies across the globe. Fragments resurfaced in the 20th century, blueprints hidden in Swiss vaults, alloys analyzed in Soviet labs. But the core technology remained suppressed, labeled as folly or fiction. The forbidden furnaces, echoes of a past civilization's glory and ruin, slumbered once more, waiting for a new age to awaken their atomic roar. In the quiet hours, one might ponder, were these not mere inventions, but rediscoveries? The 19th century bridge between steam and atom glimpsed a truth too potent, a fire that could warm or incinerate. And in hidden archives, the story endures, a testament to the perils of playing with the stars' stolen embers. As the narrative unfolds further into the labyrinth of history, consider the ripple effects that extended beyond Thorne and MacLeod's immediate circle. In the underbelly of Vienna, a circle of occultists led by an enigmatic figure known only as the Archon interpreted the ether core's symbols as invocations, blending science with sorcery. They constructed miniature furnaces in gilded chambers, using the heat to melt alchemical gold, believing it unlocked immortality. Reports from 1872 describe seances where the core's hum summoned apparitions, ghosts of ancient engineers, their forms flickering like faulty projections, warning of cycles of destruction. Meanwhile, across the ocean in the burgeoning Wild West, prospectors stumbled upon similar relics in Native American burial mounds, artifacts that mirrored Thorne's find, but bore markings of a trans-Pacific origin. A gunslinger turned tinkerer, Jedediah Crow, integrated one into a steam locomotive, creating a train that traversed the Rockies without refueling, its engine pulsing with an otherworldly glow. Legends grew of the Ghost Rail, a phantom express that vanished in a mists, carrying passengers to realms unseen. Crow documented his journeys in a tattered diary, sketching maps of subterranean caverns where ancient furnaces still smoldered, guarded by spectral sentinels. Back in Europe, the Franco-Prussian War saw covert deployment of prototype weapons derived from the technology. Prussian field marshals, privy to stolen blueprints, equipped artillery with nuclear-enhanced shells that detonated with miniature suns, carving craters in French lines. The armistice concealed these horrors, with treaties burying evidence under clauses of mutual silence. Survivors, scarred by radiation's kiss, wandered as beggars, their tales dismissed as delirium. In the salons of St. Petersburg, Russian nobility experimented with the furnaces for opulent ends, heating vast palaces without wood, illuminating balls with perpetual light. But a malfunction in 1880 flooded the Neva with contaminated waters, birthing fish with luminous scales and birds that sang in unearthly tongues. The Tsar's censors quashed the incident, exiling inventors to Siberian gulags where they toiled on frozen replicas, dreaming of thawing the tundra with atomic warmth. The story weaves into the fabric of global intrigue, touching the sands of Egypt where British colonialists unearthed pyramid chambers housing colossal cores, perhaps the power sources for the pharaoh's eternal life. Howard Carter's precursors documented hieroglyphs depicting slaves tending nuclear hearths, their bodies twisted by exposure, offerings to gods of fire. These findings fueled secret societies like the Hermetic Order, who sought to monopolize the knowledge, blending it with Masonic rites. Across the Pacific, in the fog-enshrouded islands of Japan, Meiji-era samurai scholars reverse-engineered smuggled artifacts, forging katanas in atomic forges that never dulled. Whispers of kami no kaji, divine forges, permeated folklore, attributing earthquakes to uncontrolled tests. A naval officer, Yamamoto Isoroka's ancestor, proposed fleet propulsion via these means, a vision quashed by traditionalists fearing divine wrath. As the century waned, the forbidden technology intersected with emerging fields. In Chicago's World's Fair of 1893, undercover exhibits showcased veiled prototypes, lamps that burned without wick, motors that spun eternally. Tesla, ever the visionary, sensed the undercurrents, his own experiments echoing the ancients' fission with alternating currents that mimicked nuclear pulses. He confided in letters, now lost, of dreams where past civilizations tutored him in containing the atom's rage. Yet suppression mounted. A global consortium of industrial titans, Rockefellers of oil, Krupps of steel, formed alliances to eradicate the threat to their empires. Assassins stalked innovators, laboratories burned in accidental fires, artifacts vanished into private vaults. By 1900, the nuclear furnaces receded into myth, dismissed as steampunk fantasies or alchemical delusions. But echoes persist. In remote Antarctic expeditions, explorers found frozen relics, cores embedded in ice from a time when continents shifted under atomic wars. Divers off Atlantis's supposed coordinates retrieved corroded chambers, their symbols matching Thorne's journal. And in modern vaults, classified files hint at 19th century tests influencing Hiroshima's shadow. The tale, a tapestry of ambition and caution, reminds that progress is a double-edged blade, forged in fires we barely comprehend. The past civilization's legacy endures, a forbidden whisper urging restraint lest we reignite their doom. Delving deeper, the narrative expands to encompass the human cost, the lives entwined with the furnace's glow. Take Eliza Hawthorne, a mill worker recruited by Thorne as a test subject, her hands calloused from looms, now tending the core's controls. She chronicled in secret letters the euphoria of warmth in winter hovels, but also the nightmares, visions of barren wastelands where nothing grew. Her fate, succumbing to an unknown malaise in 1855, became a martyr's tale among underground circles. Or consider the African chieftain, Mbaku of the Congo Basin, who encountered colonial raiders bearing a pilfered core. Integrating it into tribal rituals, he powered forges that crafted spears of unbreakable alloy, resisting imperial incursions. Belgian reports from 1888 describe witch fires that repelled armies, until gunboats bombarded the site, scattering the technology into jungles where it fueled guerrilla legends. In India, amid the Raja's grip, a Bengali scholar, Rajesh Gupta, deciphered Sanskrit texts linking the furnaces to Vedic Agni weapons, nuclear pyres that devoured armies in epics like the Mahabharata. His underground network built hidden reactors in Himalayan caves, powering lamps that lit resistance meetings. British spies infiltrated, leading to an 1895 raid that collapsed tunnels, burying knowledge under tons of rock. The South American connection emerges in the Andes, where Incan descendants guarded solar-aligned chambers, furnaces mimicking the sun god Inti's fury. Spanish conquistadors' lost journals from the 16th century, rediscovered in 1870s archives, describe eternal flames in Machu Picchu's depths, reactivated by curious archaeologists only to cause seismic upheavals mistaken for earthquakes. Australian Aborigines, in Dreamtime stories, spoke of star stones fallen from skies, cores that heated dreamings and warped time. Colonial miners in 1860s outback digs unearthed them, using the heat for gold smelting until radiation spawned ghost sickness, driving settlements mad with visions. The Arctic realms hold tales of Inuit shamans harnessing polar relics, furnaces that thawed permafrost for underground gardens. Norwegian explorers in 1882 documented these, but blizzards claimed their ships, preserving the secret in icy tombs. As threads converge, the story reveals a web of interconnected fates, a global symphony of discovery and denial. The forbidden technology, seed of a past civilization's apex, and nadir, challenges our narrative of linear progress, suggesting cycles where knowledge rises, ravages, and retreats. In the quiet reflection, one discerns patterns. Each rediscovery sparks innovation shadowed by peril, guardians emerging to seal it away. Thorne's lineage, perhaps, lives on in anonymous whistleblowers, MacLeod's notes fueling clandestine research. The nuclear furnaces, emblems of untamed power, beckon from history's margins, a story unending in its warnings and wonders. Extending the chronicle, envision the undercurrents in artistic realms. Painters like Turner captured the furnace's glow in stormy canvases, subliminal hints of atomic turmoil amid industrial landscapes. Writers, Poe's successors, wove tales of infernal engines in Gothic novels, veiling truth in fiction to evade censors. Musicians composed symphonies mimicking the core's hum, low drones that induced trances in listeners, evoking ancient rituals. In Vienna's opera houses, productions featured props modeled on the devices, their lights casting eerie shadows that whispered of forbidden lore. Scientific luminaries, Curie in her radium pursuits, unknowingly echoed the ancients, her discoveries a sanitized version of the 19th century experiments. Einstein's equations, birthed in thought experiments, may have drawn from leaked manuscripts describing the furnace's space-bending effects during surges. Military applications proliferated in shadows. Ottoman sultans in Istanbul tested cores for siege engines, melting Constantinople's walls in simulations. Chinese mandarins in the Forbidden City integrated them into fireworks, creating displays that lit nights like days, but accidents razed pavilions. African kingdoms, Zulu warriors under Shaka's heirs, forged shields in nuclear hearths, repelling Boer incursions with radiant armors. South Pacific islanders used oceanic relics to power canoes that crossed seas in hours, myths of flying boats born from fission-propelled vessels. The narrative swells with these vignettes, a mosaic of human endeavor against cosmic forces. The past civilization, perhaps Atlantean or Lemurian, left blueprints not as gifts but tests, challenges to see if successors could wield without destruction. The tale does not end with the century's turn, for the embers of those forbidden furnaces refused to die quietly. They smoldered on in hidden corners, passed through trembling hands like cursed heirlooms, their blue glow haunting the dreams of those who dared touch them again. In the first decade of a new century, a young American engineer named Harlan Voss, who had once served as an apprentice in Thorne's Brooklyn workshop before its final destruction, carried away a single salvage fragment, a palm-sized crystal lattice still faintly warm to the touch, etched with the same swirling script. He settled in the remote hills of Colorado, far from prying eyes, where silver mines provided cover and isolation. There, in a cabin reinforced with lead sheets scavenged from abandoned smelters, he attempted to coax the fragment back to life. Voss spent years studying the lattice, consulting Thorne's surviving journal pages that had reached him through a chain of intermediaries. He learned to tease microreactions from it, tiny bursts of heat that could melt a coin without scorching the table beneath. The device never grew large enough for practical use, but its whispers were intoxicating. Neighbors spoke of strange lights flickering in the high windows at night, of a low hum that vibrated through the ground like distant thunder. Some swore they saw Voss's silhouette elongated, distorted, as if the crystal bent light itself around him. By 1912, word of the Colorado Star reached certain ears in Europe, where the arms race was already gathering momentum. A delegation arrived unannounced, 2 Germans in heavy coats, and a Swiss banker who spoke flawless English. They offered wealth beyond imagining for the fragment. Voss refused. That winter, an avalanche buried the cabin. Official reports called it a natural tragedy. Those who knew better noticed that the snow melted oddly fast in spring, leaving behind a circle of blackened earth and shards of crystalline residue that refused to weather. Yet the knowledge leaked further. In the years leading to the Great War, fragments of the old designs appeared in unexpected places. A Serbian inventor in Belgrade constructed a pocket-sized heater that never cooled, using a modified version of McLeod's damping technique. Soldiers on the front lines traded such devices for cigarettes and rum. They kept trenches warm through the bitter winters of 1916 and 1917. When the war ended, most of those heaters vanished, confiscated, destroyed, or buried with their owners. The 1920s brought a brief, feverish revival. In Berlin's underground cabarets, performers used salvaged ether cores as stage props, their blue radiance bathing dancers in unearthly light. The effect was mesmerizing, almost hypnotic. Audiences left the theaters feeling strangely invigorated, yet plagued by nightmares of endless deserts and shattered towers. One such performer, a woman known only as Liesel the Luminescent, became obsessed with the artifacts. She collected every piece she could find, eventually assembling a small array in a hidden loft above a Kreuzberg brewery. On the night of November 9th, 1923, the array reached critical resonance. A pulse of energy rolled outward, shattering windows for 3 blocks and leaving witnesses temporarily blind. Liesel disappeared that night. Only her charred silhouette remained burned into the brick wall, like a photographic negative of a human form. Across the ocean, the technology found new life in the American Southwest. During the Dust Bowl years, desperate farmers in Oklahoma unearthed strange, humming stones while digging deeper wells. Some claimed the stones warmed the soil, coaxing meager crops from parched earth. Government agents arrived swiftly, sealing off entire counties under the pretext of geological surveys. Trucks left in the night, carrying crates marked only with hazard symbols that did not yet exist in official nomenclature. A few farmers who resisted were declared insane, their tales of eternal fires beneath the dirt dismissed as drought-induced madness. Meanwhile, the original Mesopotamian cradle continued to yield its secrets. Expeditions to the Ziggurat fields, now under British and later Iraqi control, occasionally reported unexplained radiation spikes. Archaeologists spoke in private of chambers sealed since antiquity, their walls lined with lead-like alloys and inscribed with warnings in multiple dead scripts. One photograph, smuggled out in 1937, showed a vast subterranean vault lit by an ambient glow. No torches, no lamps, only the steady radiance of dormant furnaces waiting for the correct alignment of rods. Behold one such ancient sentinel, standing eternal under desert skies. By the late 1930s, the scattered embers began to convert again. Physicists in Germany, Italy, and the United States, many of whom had unknowingly encountered the old lore, started independent work on chain reactions. The official history records their breakthroughs as original genius. The hidden chronicle suggests otherwise, that the ideas arrived pre-packaged, carried in journals, alloys, and dreams planted long before by the 19th century heretics. When the first atomic piles roared to life in the 1940s, the Guardians, the same shadowy lineage that had confronted Thorne and MacLeod, knew the cycle had turned once more. This time, the furnaces were not contained in crystal and brass, but in graphite and heavy water. The blue glow became the blinding flash. The promise of power became the threat of annihilation. Yet even in that new age of terror, fragments of the older, gentler path persisted. In remote monasteries of Tibet, in Andean villages, in Pacific atolls, caretakers still tend small, moderated cores. Eternal flames kept at a whisper, used only to warm the sick, to light the way for pilgrims, to remind that the atom's heart can be a hearth instead of a weapon. The story of the nuclear furnaces of the 19th century is therefore not one of invention, but of rediscovery and suppression, of humanity brushing against a power older than nations, wiser than science, and far more dangerous than pride. Each time we approach it, the past civilization seems to watch, silent and patient, waiting to see whether this cycle will end in mastery, or in the same ashes that buried them long ago. And somewhere, in a sealed vault or a forgotten mine, a single crystal still hums softly, waiting for the next hand brave or foolish enough to turn the rods once more.